Welcome to episode 506 of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. I am Dave Deacon, and have we got a great episode for you. We're taking a deep dive into soil nutrition with a 2017 graduate of Oklahoma State University's Plant and Soil Sciences Department, who went on to start his own soil testing lab, serving Oklahoma, Texas, Missouri, Kansas, and New Mexico, all from his hometown of Lamont, Oklahoma. We'll kick off our conversation with Enviro Ag Labs' Jace Whitehead from the Oklahoma Wheat Commission's booth at the 2026 AgriFest in just a few minutes. And of course, as always, you will be able to find all of the information we talk about in this episode and past episodes on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. But first, we have a crop update that was recorded this past Friday, February 13th, at the Oklahoma Cattle Conference at the Payne County Expo Center in Stillwater, and we'll get to that in just a minute. As always, we start with a quick trip around the table for an introduction to the dream team of dirt and everything that grows from it. Let's start off with Oklahoma State University Extension Precision Nutrient Management Specialist.
Everything else about ag labs and environmental labs are, I need 0.001 megagrams, and this one extraction we do is like, you're making brownies.
Dr. Brian Arnell. And next to him is Oklahoma State University Extension Cropping System Specialist.
Like a dueling piano bar? Oh, I kind of like that option.
Dr. Josh Lofton. Let's kick things off with our crop update that we recorded with the doctors on February 13th, 2026 at the Oklahoma Cattle Conference. And you'll notice that we get a little quieter as the update goes along. Well, it's because we're actually recording in the same hall where the presentations are going on. And we're trying to be respectful to those folks who are on stage. So without further ado, on to the update. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. So here we are at another trade show, and last time we got together, we were over at Enid at the KNID AgriFest, and this time we're at the Central Oklahoma Cattle Conference here in Stillwater at the Payne County Expo Center, and this has been a lot of fun. Dr. Darrell Peel was just up on stage and was talking about cattle markets. You, Brian Arnell, are about to get up on stage and talk. But before we did that, I wanted to just get a quick crop update. Where are we with everything growing from this beautiful red dirt?
I'll hit the small grains coming up. So really what we've got, the snow came in. We had okay moisture. We've actually got a call for rain this weekend. So hopefully by the time this airs, we've had the rain and it packed up. Seeing a lot of calls. There's a lot of wheat that's starting to grow, getting some response to it. Canola's starting to pop, starting to grow a little bit. This is the time. I did see a note that the hollow stem predictor says we're a little bit ahead of schedule due to some warmer weather.
Yeah.
I would say, on the grazed wheat, maybe, but grazing tends to hold us back a little bit. On our later planted wheat, that hollow stem predictor is not quite set well for an October, November planted wheat, so that doesn't mean we're at hollow stem tomorrow. It does mean we need to get our act together and figure out what's going on. A lot of folks are putting fertility out in front of this rain, and I wanted to get something out. This is behind. I don't think now is the time necessarily that we want to put all of our nitrogen out. I would like to have seen them to get some enriched strips out before this rain and let them get in and make a call later, because if we get 3/4 of an inch in the Southwest District, it's not going to do a whole lot of good.
Yeah.
We need more, and so I'd really like this weather to play out another week or two and look at what our long range looks like before we start getting worried. Remembering we don't necessarily have to have all of our eggs in the basket at this moment in time. We've got some time with the wheat. Talking up even on the Kansas border that, the good wheat is 40% row coverage, maybe 50. Starting to show a little in stress on things that receive 0. So wheat's growing. It is time to start planting nitrogen. If you don't have the capability to get it out when you want to, then let's try to get in front of one of these weather events that's coming. But again, all the research says that we can hold off till closer to hollow stem. And the only reason I want to hold off a little bit longer this year is to play the market, play the weather.
Yeah.
Really gauge our inputs. This isn't the year that we need to go all out and put all of our money in on this crop. We need to be very thoughtful about how much money we spend on this crop.
Yeah.
And the earlier you go with any of your decisions reduces your ability to have information, flexibility, and let the weather play out. Again, if this is the last rain we get, you probably don't need to be fertilizing right now.
Right.
So play it. It's probably to the benefit of not shooting for maximum yield this year, but shooting for maximum economic efficiencies, which might be a bushel or two under maximum. So be thoughtful. Reach out to your local county educator. Reach out to me. I've got a lot of folks doing enriched strips this year. This is the year that it's shocking. I've had at least half a dozen folks call me. I had one producer. This is a young guy that shocked me. He scanned off every one of his SBNRC web pages and then mailed it to me with notes.
But this seems to be the year to do this.
This is the year.
We're at cost-cutting year.
We are at cost-cutting year, and so I need to get out there on my stuff. But this is get your enriched strips out. I need to be pushing that. It's not too late. The Northeast Oklahoma called on my way back from Jonesboro last week. The Rendells said, is it too late? I was like, no, it's definitely not too late. You guys might have big wheat, but you've got time. Remember, we've got until, end of March, end of March to really worry. And even at that point, we've got some more time. And time is our friend this year with the economics.
Well, and excuse me, I just looked at the Mesonet, and they're at soil moisture is okay, but it's very patchy.
Yeah, it's patchy.
I mean, there's 40% in northwest Oklahoma around Breckenridge, but I mean, you go 30 miles to the east, good soil moisture, and so that's going to be crop by crop, mile by mile.
And it is time, and I'll let Josh lead in, but it's time to figure out your pre-plant. So if you don't have your soil test for your corn, sorghum, soy, cotton, all that stuff, get it done.
Yeah. This
is not the year just to play it by the wing. Get it done and know what you need P&K-wise.
Yeah.
If you're using replacement because you're going through a crop crest, somebody, you don't necessarily have to go 100% crop replacement this year. Pull it back on your economics of scale and put on 33%, 44% replacement. Just look at some cost savings.
Well, and it's the big thing, a couple of things. One, because corn planting season is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're a month from, really depending on what the weather does in the next month, how much rain we get, how warm it gets. We are a month to a month and a half, 45 days away from it's time to put corn seed in the ground. And then shortly after that, then everything rolls, right? Yeah. So grain, sorghum, soybeans, cotton, panhandle, we just kind of roll from there. The biggest thing that I will say is that I've heard several reports, if you have canola of diamondback moths out across, even our plots, our variety trial, out on a grower field, we the grower scouted, got positive diamondback moths. So, making those applications, don't sell out. I think a lot of people that are growing canola maybe for the first time in several years are selling out how good the canola looks and don't sell that out quite yet. At least a lot of the canola that I looked at this year still looks pretty good, if not really good.
Right.
So now the moisture in the last 3 weeks, it probably took a hit to that. So it is one of those things that we can't sell out on. Okay, we got a rain in mid-February. Let's go.
Right.
I will say that of course by the time this releases, it'll probably be too late. But it's oat time as well. Yeah. So, the big thing is that spring planted oats.
Valentine's Day.
Yep. It's the whole, rule of thumb. And at least, one of my grad students that have been kind of looking at not necessarily do we actually need to plant on Valentine's Day, because I think most growers that have done it for so many years can't be wrong.
Right. Yeah.
But it's how much flexibility we have. And, we do have about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, we do have some time. And so if you miss this rain, maybe it is apt to maybe wait and see if you get another one. But, it is oat time. And if we're going to get something in, really depends on how the spring lasts. We're kind of at one of those weird springs, Dave, that we either could be in a month, we could be in the middle of the summer, or we could be back talking about snow and ice storms.
Well,
and it's a really It's one of those springs.
It depends on who you believe whenever it comes to weather, but I've heard multiple meteorologists say that we broke the La Nina and we're switching to El Nino. But that could take place in the next month or so. I mean, in this part of the world, from what I understand, from what I can remember, an El Nino means that we'll have warmer, wetter spring. So maybe that might play into oats,
Yeah, well, the trick we are, and Brian kind of, Daryl was up here talking about markets for cattle and stuff like that, and it's kind of, I've talked to a lot of growers and some of our economists here on campus, and it's kind of, we're kind of in a pickle on this wheat crop right now, in that it looks really good.
Yeah.
It looks really good. It's a great looking wheat crop.
It is.
It's just not worth anything.
Right.
And neither is the hay. And so if you have animals walking across it, those animals are worth a good amount. But we have a lot of hay.
Yeah.
At least right now, the grain isn't worth a lot.
Right.
And so we're kind of in a pickle on what we do. And if you can graze it out, maybe that's your best option. Maybe commodity price kind of comes around. So, but then, usually when we're at a wheat pickle year, we're in a year that it's like, but soybeans are outstanding. we're not in one of those either. So corn, sorghum, soybeans, cotton, none of it is really exciting. And so I know a lot of growers are really in a pickle on what they're going to do.
Well, that led me to my question that you've kind of answered, not in a great, outcome way, but what are the hot crops this coming season? I mean,
the four-legged ones that walk around the pasture. I mean, really, from a commodity standpoint, we're gonna of course see corn. We're gonna of course see soybeans. We're gonna of course see cotton. We're gonna of course see milo. We're gonna see all these things. But do we grow in any way? I don't. At least right now, and again, caution, not an economist making economic forecasts here, but I there's kind of those years that you feel it's like, the corn's really going to explode this year. And I tell you, if I put a flag behind a crop, it might be corn.
Right.
But I'm not real excited about corn, so I don't know how anybody else can be, especially ones that have to spend their hard-earned money putting in inputs for that. So we're at a catch right now. Something's got to break at some point in time. And so I see things getting clear, but I think this is another one of these years that it's really those decisions that we like sometimes to be so clear on, like, this is what we're going to be growing this summer, is not really coalesced yet. It's still very fuzzy on what growers are going to do with those flexible acres that aren't necessarily almost always dedicated to a rotation.
Well, and one thing you've always talked about is the double crop possibility, the follow-up crop. So, I mean, if we have a lackluster crop in one, there's, being this part of the world, there's generally an opportunity to pick up a second crop in there.
Well, and there is, and if we fully break into a warm and wet cycle, I think we will see a lot of growers tend to favor that because, again, kind of like what Brian says of flexibility, but in the last couple of years, our double crops have been burned so many times because of how hot and dry August and September have been. And those were normally temperatures are still warm, but it's humid. And so it doesn't feel good for us, but it's great for our crops. And that we were going to start to get rain showers, and we haven't. And so a lot of those systems have been burned in the last couple of years that normally in these kind of situations kind of help us stay afloat, and Mother Nature has played us negative on that one. So, if we do get into a warm and wet cycle and we do get a lot of good spring rains, which, I mean, we're in March and we're already talking about drought, or we're not even in March yet, we're in February and we're already talking about severe drought in some areas. that's not a good place to start on some of these discussions.
What would be a good crop for those severe drought situations? I mean, you got to put something to cover the ground. What do you put in there? And then secondarily, we go in with the approach of a severe drought. Oh my gosh, we got 4 inches of rain and save the crop, because there are crops out there that, you know, are targeted towards a drought that may not survive or thrive in a wet situation.
Yeah, so that's a very tough decision right now, because usually what we have is we look really good at the start,
right,
and then we get drought later in the season, and so it's like, okay, we've produced a ton of biomass that we aren't able to sustain anymore.
Right.
And so usually my tend is to go anything that we can forage. You know, because if we have good conditions early and we produce a lot of biomass, that's just a lot of feed now at this point. But we're not sitting in that circumstance. We have a very real condition that if we don't start getting a lot more frequent rain showers and a lot more temperate conditions, then we won't even produce enough biomass to even sustain a crop. Not to mention that last year we produced so much hay. We put up so much hay that the hay's not worth anything.
Yeah.
It's almost cheaper to buy hay than it is to grow your own kind of situation right now. So, you know, that was an easy decision when we start off really good. When we start off already bad, you know, that's a tough one, Dave.
Yeah. What about the overhead prices? What about the increase in the inputs? I mean, how does that impact crop decisions?
A lot. I mean, if you know, I was teaching in class just the other day, is that, you know, a lot of times if a grower in this area, so the Stillwater area, decides to choose milo or corn, is going to be, okay, how high is commodity price and how high is input cost? And that back and forth kind of dictates what is the best thing to grow. Input costs are kind of all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
You know, nitrogen, some sources are, at least to what they were 4 years ago, are relatively modest.
Right.
But our seed costs are continuing to grow out of control. Our herbicide costs are outstanding. And, I just heard my name.
Yeah.
And so there's some input costs that are high as they've ever been, and there's some that have kind of come down and kind of are a little, I don't want to say they're friendly right now, but they're a little more modest than they've been in the last 4 years. Yeah. So, you know, it's a tough draw, because, you know, you talk about seed, you talk about fertility, you talk about herbicides. It's required on everything.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough decision. And I know that's a lot to, as I spin my cup around and it says it depends. but I think again, and a lot of times we're looking at these flexible acres, and a grower is going to have an idea, at least that probably have an idea right now, okay, that acre is going to go to corn, but there might be 400 or 500 acres that's fairly flexible.
Yeah.
I think that they're probably going to kick that can down the road as far as we can.
Yeah.
Where that decision point comes, I don't know. It might be a fallow year, might be a late. I mean, maybe we got to find some place for all these animals to eat, and we run hay stocks down pretty low.
Yeah.
But at least the growers that I've talked to have said that, you know, where they got forage in good and we got off to a good start, it's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's like we're not feeding a lot of hay in some areas. Now Southwest is feeding a ton of hay right now.
Exactly.
It's selling off because they're feeding so much hay.
Yeah.
But the North Central, some of those guys haven't fed all year.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So it really is going to depend on where you are. I think one of the hardest places to decide what to do this year might be that Southwest region, because I think they were hoping for corn.
Yeah, which still amazes me that's a crop down in Southwest Oklahoma.
Yeah, and it did. I think
did
we
it
had
do last year?
I think we had above threshold expectations last year, and they underperformed expectations.
So average.
But me looking from the outside, they fell into expectation, average, or if not, maybe slightly above average of what I would have expected corn in Tillman County to do. When we're still seeing 80 bushels pulled off, if you're mid-season and you're thinking 125 bushels, 80 bushels is a disappointment.
Yeah.
But when you tell me corn in Tillman County, 80 bushels sounds really good.
You get a badge.
But we can out-farm ourselves if we're expecting 125 bushels.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of growers kind of fell in, is they were pushing for that 125, and we didn't have the conditions in the fall to get us there.
Yeah.
And it's no fault of their own. They probably managed and successfully managed for that, but hot and dry Septembers do the worst to the crops.
Yeah.
And, a couple of really nice Septembers do a lot of magic for us.
Yep. If we can just make it to September.
Well, we got to make it a lot of places before then, but we need a nice, warm, but not hot, and wet.
Yeah.
Late August and September would be. I don't need to confuse September for July.
Yeah.
Which is what I've done in the last couple of years, is that we've almost been hotter in September than we have been in July sometimes.
Well, and we've been rained out in May and June whenever we're trying to cut wheat. So, I mean, that would be okay a little bit earlier.
It would be great into April.
We'd take that.
Even into March.
Yeah.
But, we've been a little weird the last couple of years on weather and temperature and conditions, and it has kind of thrown us into doing things. And me, Dave, I've kind of moved off of, this is when we plant this crop. This is when we typically have the lowest risk to plant this crop. And we've had to move off of, a lot of times, these low risk areas into some more moderate to higher risk areas, because we haven't been able to get in. It's been too dry, so we don't have, so you're putting a very expensive corn seed, soybean seed in the ground into dry dirt, basically, and that's just not a good option.
Can't win.
So we haven't had a good, clean decision process in a couple of years, and I think, bless these growers, because I couldn't do this with my livelihood on the line for the last several years. It's hard enough making my decisions, making multiple thousands of acres decisions. That's a challenge, and unfortunately it looks like this is going to be another year to where, between environment and commodity price and input price, we're not going to have a clean decision this year either.
So stay tuned. That was our crop update that we recorded this past Friday. And now on to our conversation with Jace Whitehead of Enviro Ag Labs. You are listening to the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. So, Brian, introduce our guest.
Well, we always say that if you make eye contact with us, we're going to pull you into the podcast. Well, Jace didn't. I went to him. So I sought out what is the next volunteer.
I love that word, volunteer, although it's really not.
No, he's voluntold. So, and I can volunteer him in a way, because we have Jace Whitehead. Jace is just reminded me, a 2017 grad from the OSU program. And I want to bring Jace on because he's very unique in what he's done in his afterlife, after grad afterlife. And so we've got a lot of our grads go out and they go farm, or they go consult, or even some might start a precision ag company, which Jace kind of did, but he went about it all wrong because he started a soils lab, which is not the easiest thing. And he didn't work in the soils lab. But he decided, I want that kind of wonderful life, and I'm going to develop a soils lab, an ag testing soils lab. And so he's been out in the world making a soil testing lab fly out of the big city of
Lamont.
I mean, we're in the metropolis of Lamont. We've got all the resources need for an ag lab.
I've driven that way many times, and as I go through the town, I think this would be a perfect place for a soils lab.
Right,
and you filled the void.
Yes.
That's great.
That's what they're missing. So Jace, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're out there doing.
So I started, been in the soil testing since about 18 years old. Kind of got started with the land application of drilling fluids, kind of doing the permitting process, and you needed a lab. You also needed a lab that would do it 24 hours. hours.
That's true.
Not many labs do that. So my parents, they used to do a lot of that spreading. So my mom kind of was really the head of it, and we kind of started looking at a soil lab, talked to Highland Zhang, and then we went and we had to get a soil science degree, so we came to Oklahoma State, and I really didn't get into it to be agronomy soil lab, because at $12 a sample,
Right.
that's hard to float,
Yeah.
like Arnold was saying, but I just started really falling in love with it, and then I already had the ICP, which is the workhorse of a lab, so it just kind of, honestly, my dad even said, "You're wasting your time,"
Yeah.
and I wanted to prove him wrong, and I feel like I have, and that's and I kind of got into the agronomy, and then, to be honest, to fund my lab, I started doing precision ag because I needed the volume of samples, so kind of started doing that, and the last few years I've been getting agronomy clients and kind of starting to really come off, but for a good 7-8 years it was.
Are you still doing a lot of the drilling mud stuff? Is that still a part of your lab? What's the name of your lab in your company?
Envirag Labs.
Envirag Labs.
Yeah. I mean, I've had different companies and sold them, and I started this back up in 2020. I do have one client still in the soil farming industry, plus my parents do one rig, which is, I just kind of do that on the side for them, but kind of more moved out of that because I used to work for one, and now I don't. So, yeah, I still have one client, and they keep me pretty busy. They're one of the reasons I jumped off, because they were, once again, they were at $40 a sample, and you're doing, a fair amount of them.
A lot of our listeners probably know what ag samples are, and we'll get to that more later. Can you talk about what the analysis is and what you're doing on those for soil farming, for drilling mud application, kind of a quick and dirty?
Yeah, so we're doing a 1-to-1 soil to water extractant, very similar to saturated paste. It correlates real well. That's just kind of the OCC guidelines. We're doing it every 10 acres on application place where they're applicating. And, they put that into a whole permitted process. So we do see pretty much they try to spread on ground every 3 years. So we're seeing every year of kind of acclimation of salts and just making sure that we can spread on it. And, and then I do saturated paste. I don't usually do it for the soil farming stuff, but for salt spills in the oil industry. So
the saturated paste is kind of a fun one. So the 1-to-1, you have what you do is you put 100 grams of soil, 100 grams of water, or 10 grams of soil, 10 grams of water. You push the water out, and you find out what salts and nutrients are into that mix. Saturated paste is probably the most artistic form of soil testing there can be, because the guide for saturated paste, and I used to do this as an undergrad, is you have a volume of soil, and it doesn't have to be a known volume of soil. You have a volume of soil, and you wet it up slowly to the point where it is the perfect brownie mix.
Oh, really?
And so you're wetting this up, and you're not doing an amount of soil. You're putting the right amount of water in, where if you have like a batter spatula is what we would use, you need to be able to have a shine on this. The soil needs a shine.
Just like brownies.
And you need to be able to create a peak that doesn't fall.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And if you put too much water in, you have to add more soil. So you always hold extra soil because you go, crap.
Right.
And so it is truly, you're looking for this water to soil ratio that creates a batter mix. That's why I'm saying everything else about ag labs and environmental labs are, I need 0.001 megagrams.
Yeah.
And this one extraction we do is like, you're making brownies.
Yes.
It's all about the water to soil ratio in that, and there's so many parameters that guide that you can't just say an absolute volume or an absolute amount of water, because of it. So every time we talk saturated paste, it just always is like, because we're so accurate, and all my lab techs are so OCD. If you're a lab tech, you have to have a little bit of OCD or a whole lot, right? It's usually a whole lot. And the saturated paste would just drive them crazy, because they want to measure out.
Yeah. It has to be this number. No, it has to be this consistency.
It has to be a consistency.
Yeah.
So, moving into the ag samples, you said it's taken a couple years. What first got you into doing the ag samples, moving from an environmental sample to an ag sample?
really just the more I learned, your soil fertility class kind of got really, and I started asking you more questions then, just kind of because there's so many extractants to pick from, and then I based most of my stuff off Oklahoma State because that's where we live,
Right.
And it's the Mehlich. It made it really easy to run, compared to the more standard northern. Bray, ammonium acetate, that is
Right.
3 extractions. And when you're a one-man show for the longest time, not anymore, but that is, you're trying to reduce that. So,
Yeah.
That's kind of what kind of got me into it. And then, getting a precision ag software and then just start pulling samples, really just trying to make it work and just really letting the environmental kind of fund it.
Now, one of the things I thought it'd be fun to bring him on is he had some questions, and I thought maybe we do this Q&A of the questions he had and turned it into, because what he's talking about now, he just mentioned was extractions. And so when we look at soil testing, we look at different places, and phosphorus is the worst. Phosphorus is the one that has all the problems, because with nitrogen, we run one extraction, you're pulling the nitrate is usually moved by water. It's a negative charge. The ammonium is pulled off by a cation. Potassium's kind of easy. Phosphorus is this little excitable element that is a pain in the chemical butt, because you honestly don't. Phosphorus doesn't live. You don't have elemental phosphorus in the atmosphere.
Okay.
Do you know what elemental phosphorus does in air?
No idea.
Blows up.
Okay. Oh, well,
so
you
if
probably
you
don't
have
need that.
true phosphorus,
I do remember
it has
that.
to be underwater.
I remember that.
It's that reactive. So it's also very pH sensitive. So at low pHs, which we have a few in Oklahoma, is really reactive with iron and aluminum and all of our metal ions. And then in high pHs, it's very reactive with calcium. So a soil test extraction, we have Mehlich 3, we have Bray. The purpose of a soil test extraction is to pull off what is immediately available for the plant and what could be.
Yeah.
So it's called labile, but it's basically the could be's. Well, on a low pH, it could be some aluminum phosphates. It could be some iron phosphates. Yeah. On a high pH, it could be some calcium phosphates. And it takes different chemistries to pull that off of the soil particle. And so we have Mehlich 3, we have Bray, we have Olson. There is, at one point, there was 12 to 15 active phosphorus extractions in the U.S. Now we're down to about 5 or 6.
Wow.
We've really reduced the number. Mehlich 3 is a pretty common one. Jace had, and someone asked him, have to re-question. He had a question about that, and it's very relevant to our listeners, because if they use somebody other than OSU, they're getting these numbers.
Okay.
So, Jace, please continue with your question.
Yeah, so I've had customers, and the more north you go, the more Bray and ammonium acetate you get. And, I learned Mehlich 3, and the questions they're giving me is in low pHs, they're seeing low Bray numbers, but when you run Mehlich, sometimes it's a fair amount higher, not even correlating higher.
Yeah.
And I was kind of wondering, honestly, just a more in-depth answer of why is that? Because I'm more or less, I have a general idea of why, but I'm just running the samples.
Right.
And so the more in-depth but still general answer is it's what's building that extraction base, the chemistry used within it, is that Mehlich 3 is more aggressive at getting the aluminum phosphates. So Bray can get the iron phosphates fairly well. It's aluminum phosphates. And so we're getting more of the aluminum iron phosphates out with Mehlich 3 that are very, honestly, in our soils probably available. We've done some work that shows that our acidity is young acidity. Mm-hmm. So in North Carolina, they've been acidic for hundreds of years. In Oklahoma, we've been acidic for 60 years.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And so that new acidity has different amounts of aluminum and weakly bound aluminum phosphates. So Mehlich 3 is pulling those off. Mm-hmm. Bray does to a degree. The bigger issue is once you get to like a 5.2 or a 5, which is where I'm assuming you're seeing the issues in the high 4s, low 5s. Mm-hmm. The phosphorus number is really out of whack because we have so much issue with acidity. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like sulfur. Sulfur is this really hard number to get at because it's an organic driven. Phosphorus and acidity is hard to get at because there's so many variances of aluminum and how that aluminum is binding to the phosphate. And if we have aluminum, Jace, do we have good root growth?
No.
And so we've got this whole issue with low pH and phosphorus extraction. And so there are correlative numbers. In fact, we were talking about who'd you say you're working with now?
Heartland
soil samples. I'm doing for Heartland quite a bit. I'm providing some correlation for the Kansas K-State and for NRCS for their equip stuff. I'm doing some correlative analysis because Kansas still uses Mehlich 3 for their
they just switched, didn't they? They were real big Bray. I mean, last time I looked at their recs, they were real big Bray, and then I looked again, and I was like, they're Mehlich now.
And so I'm doing a lot of those correlative conversions for them, and so it's interesting. You have a correlation for lower pH, correlation for neutral, correlation for higher. So I've got a curve, but it does separate. It's still, even at the lower, it's more of a 12 to 15% change, and it's somewhat consistent, but not fully consistent. And maybe you got enough samples where you could make your own curve on that.
Yeah, and I'll say I always tell people with the phosphorus, I tell them, like, you need to lime it, obviously. You get, under 5.5, you probably need to do something. And, the phosphorus chart of availability goes like, it goes in ups and downs. So I tell them, like, let's worry about your phosphorus when we get your
right.
If it's, not just insanely low.
As you've grown your business into this, where have your customers come from in the ag industry?
It started off when I would find land to spread drilling mud. I just kind of pitched and then a lot of times I would just run the ag stuff on them, not even charge it, and just say, hey, you need to do something, and kind of slowly built, because I would talk to, we would do 200 permits a year. Well, I talked to, just alone 200. I'd talk to probably about 400 or 500 people, and I just kind of always try to pitch it, and that slowly built it, and then when I first started, obviously I couldn't handle that much, and just making sure with Mehlich, if I've sometimes making that extractant can be difficult. Bray is actually really easy to make.
Yeah, it is.
And so I liked the Mehlich because it was quicker, but having kind of really just making sure and fine tuning everything, and then I kind of got to started getting to a size and started getting some semi-automated, like a semi-automated pH, semi-automated kind of organic matter. And started to really get into that, and I started going after these bigger clients because the one-off people, other than grid sampling, it's kind of hard to make 1250 work when you have to have a 30-minute conversation with them. And I love talking soil, but making $12 for 30 minutes of work is hard to run a business.
So how many samples are you running a year nowadays?
About 7,000 to 8,000, and to be honest, they're growing. I wouldn't be surprised if I hit 10 next year. I think it's I'm getting in a lot of agronomist ears, and when they're doing 2,000 or 3,000, I mean, I think I might have picked one up even this weekend that just, and trying to beat those soil labs, just quickness.
Yeah. Well, and this is a question for both of you. I understand that you can't, say this person, this quality of their soil at this point, but are either of you seeing trends, say, over the past 5 years in soil nutrients, soil quality over those years? From your clients?
No, I mean, a lot of them, there's guys that are doing it really intensive and they know what they're doing, but there's a lot of guys we've been putting on anhydrous, and I can already a lot of times I can tell you what your soil's going to be without even running the test, just because tell me what you're doing. And, there's kind of two separate people on that. So it's, with those newer clients, we try to just, first off, it's, we can talk phosphorus, we can talk micronutrients. A lot of them try to get in the micronutrients because they've heard a lot of people talk about micronutrients. Right. And, I mean, with the research in Oklahoma, I don't feel like it's a thing. So I kind of just we're going to do pH. Let's worry about pH. Yeah. And then P. Yeah. And to be honest, we have a lot of K in our soils, so I don't worry about it as much. And row crops don't really need a whole bunch of K.
So what I would say to answer that on my side is that I have seen a significant improvement in soil condition, whether it's soil health, nutrients, or otherwise, as we've moved into crop rotation. So when you see a region move out of continuous cultivated winter wheat and start bringing in double crop, then you start bringing in soybean full season. Then you start bringing in corn. Any region that has gone from a grain only wheat or a graze out or wheat only to start bringing in corn, you can almost guarantee that the inputs start changing. They care more about pH. A lot more. They're paying more attention to their P and K, and so you see something. you see as the output starts getting higher, your input starts getting higher, and you start seeing those levels. So that'd be the bigger change. And honestly, one of the first things that did that, and I think we've talked about this, when canola hit Oklahoma, the biggest thing canola did for Oklahoma was it started introducing farmers into crop rotation. We saw that the continuous wheat guys that grabbed canola started paying more attention to the canola, and it bled into the wheat.
Yeah.
And we saw that impact wheat just as much as we did anything else, is that, maybe we should be doing something other than 100 pounds of anhydrous in August and done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself, just crop management, has led to better soil productivity.
Well, and to that end, canola was introduced as a alternate for weed control
Yep.
in winter crops.
Yeah, so that cleanup, and we always see in there, we might not yield great on the canola,
Yeah.
but the wheat after canola was always a winner.
yeah.
That was a big value of canola, is that we get that 10-15% bump in a falling wheat crop. That was always great. No, Jace, you got anything?
Well, I was going to ask.
Yeah.
We didn't really go over a bunch of base saturation
Yep.
numbers,
Mhm.
but everyone requested it.
Yep.
And I was kind of wondering, doing K-Rex off of that. If you kind of listen to other people,
Mhm.
they say 4%, 3%. There's no real thing, and we didn't really deal with that. If it's the K was at
No,
this level, you either need it or not.
Yeah.
And I was kind of wondering, go a little bit
So
more on that.
the base saturation, and I'm picking my words. You can edit this out because I could get in trouble. All right, so base saturation is one of these things. It has been, base saturation, for those that don't know, is looking at the balance between calcium, magnesium, potassium, and they'd usually add sodium and hydrogen on that. So it's our base cations, those that are positively charged, that hold on to the cation exchange capacity. It's that world.
Okay.
And in theory, we have the right combination of the percentage of calcium to the ratio of magnesium to the ratio of potassium and all that stuff. And so base sat has been, honestly, something that's been promoted in the agriculture sector since the 60s.
Okay.
We don't find it being, especially if you look at the calcium-magnesium ratio, we don't find it in research as being an economical, viable thing to chase to change.
Okay.
In theory, it should make huge impact. On the potassium side, Jace, we're chasing. We've done a lot of work. In fact, we've got fields in Lamont with beans. So we've got some stuff near you. We've got Ponca City. We've got Miami, trying to understand what are the drivers of potassium response. And the base sat is one of the things we're looking at. It's not shaking out to be a very big driver to the response of potassium. Again, in theory, the theory behind base sat is as solid and as sound as you can get. From what I would gather, and we don't have absolute, so this could be when the final research is out, it could have more value. In fact, that's one of the things that Sam Aiken's doing this week, is getting all the base sat numbers, is that there are other parameters in the soil that are more important. And so we're actually seeing that the physical nature of the soil and the ability of the root move is a bigger issue than base sat. And base sat is a bit of a residual of that. So have you seen any or talked to anybody about high mag soils?
Yes, and how hard they are.
How
and
hard
all
they are. So high mag, so you always hear this magnesium-calcium ratio, and we want a higher ratio, and we get a call about high mag soils all the time. And while there are some good soils that have high magnesium that we may have some cation issues, the majority of the time when I get a high mag soil call, it is a heavy, heavy clay.
Okay.
And so they're saying, I've got problems in my field, my crop's not growing because of high magnesium. If you've ever tried to farm a high clay soil, you've got more problems than just magnesium. It's either you're either stuck because you can't get the equipment through there because you sink, or 2 days later it's so dry you can't get a plow on the ground.
Right.
Like, it's just a hard soil. And so what I think we're seeing is that heavy clay is more of a magnesium-dominated clay type, and so it's the correlative, not causation situation, is that we have the correlation of we have a high mag and we have poor yields, but really think the causation is it's a high clay soil, that the clay content that sells creates root restrictions, creates water flow restrictions, creates plow pans, creates all these different issues in the scenario. And then magnesium is just one of those things we point out and say, hey, it's high mag. And it's 60% clay content, or it's your shallow. It's so that, I say, Jace, is one of the things that I'm seeing more. The drivers to potassium, and I'll just say this, one of Sam's really cool outputs, this was in northeast Oklahoma, that gray clay loamy soil overlaid clay. And so we're talking about concretion. So concretion's, Dave, because you know, right? You want to tell me what concretion is?
It's that thing whenever you twist your back
right?
the wrong way.
I thought you were going to go crustration. So
that was my next one.
We have basically nodules in the soil
Yeah.
that are blacks and yellows, and it's because there's no oxygen, so manganese and all these things react. So it tells us that the soil level doesn't have oxygen.
You're right.
And so you have this heavier soil overlaid a heavy clay that has a lot of water in it.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the potassium response across the field, as soil test K goes down in the top 6 inches, the response to potassium goes up, which is what we would expect. If you look at 6 to 12 inches, as soil and this is a stronger relationship, as soil test K goes up, the response to potassium goes up.
Oh.
So that means the higher the K fertility, the more response. Well, it just so happens that that clay soil is really high in potassium, and so what we're catching is a shallower soil. So as that clay starts getting closer and closer to the surface, we're getting more and more potassium. So it's honestly estimate of depth to BT, or the depth to the clay layer, or the rooting zone. So it basically says, as our rooting zone is shallower, we respond more to potassium.
Right.
Which makes perfect sense if we know potassium in the plant. So it's kind of these correlation, causation issues that we're finding as this, and we hear a lot about things. I'm like, it's definitely related, but it's probably not the root cause. Let's go back to basic soils. Let's go back to basic plant physiology and sort some of these things out.
That's amazing. So where does that come into different crops? Do we see that adjust from, you said corn, but then also wheat, sorghum?
So we chase it, and my big responsive research was wheat and phosphorus, because wheat is one of our most phosphorus responsive along with corn.
Right.
And soybean and potassium. Our bigger soybean limited crops are soybean and cotton.
Right.
Part of that is because they demand so much potassium during pod fill and boll fill. A big cotton plant, like I'm talking a 4.5 bale, 5 bale cotton plant, will pull in upwards of 5 to 6 pounds of potassium per day.
Wow, per day.
Per day. And a big soybean plant, the 80, 90, 100 bushel beans, will pull 3 to 5 pounds of K per day. So we've got this massive draw, and it takes a lot in the system. Well, one way to short that potassium uptake is to make smaller roots.
Okay.
And so that whole rooting volume.
Yeah.
And so one of my recent talks I've done, I'm moving towards, we have forever looked at the soil as a 6-inch slice. Our soil sample's 6 inches deep, aquifer slice is 6. But if we want to get better at fertility, we need to be looking more at the full soil, the rooting zone.
Right.
And so as we get into the next level, I think of PA is we're going to try to find engineers that help us measure more accurately potential rooting depth, or depth to limiting layer, depth to clay, or depth to water, or something like that.
That actually, I almost asked where the rooting level would be with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that you kind of answered that.
But right now we don't have decent tech that can do it.
Yeah.
The closest thing we could probably get to that, and I've had a lot of discussions. I have a feeling you're a History Channel buff.
I am, actually. Yes.
Curse of Oak Island.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. So the ground penetrating radars that are used to locate mummy tombs and buried gold that they have never found on Oak Island. So
right.
I watched that freaking show, and they've still never found anything.
But next season they're going to.
The GPRs aren't quite sensitive enough, but
Yeah.
that would be the kind of technology we need to say that this 10 acres has 2 foot of topsoil, or 2 foot of good A before you get to clay, but over here it's real shallow.
Yeah.
Because we don't have it on the go yet. So that's kind of finding the right engineers.
Would this be a good FFA project for your son to take to nationals next year?
If it would be a good thing for him, because he would be rich as hell if he could figure it out in 2 years.
Dad could retire.
Dad could retire. If he could figure out ground penetrating radars by the time he's 17 years old, I think we're pretty well set. But no.
Well, that's awesome. So what does all of this information mean for the Oklahoma producer? I mean, it is a lot of information. It is a lot that they do on a daily basis, because, I'm just going to throw this out there. there is a perception that farmers just go out and plant a seed in the ground, and then a wheat plant comes up, and then 3-6 months later they cut that wheat, and then it goes to the grain bin. But both of you work really hard on helping those plants grow more efficiently, helping the ag producer learn about the soil that they are using.
I don't know. I look at this as that we can get on two ends. Jason and I can be very chemically, right, and really talking to the finite things. One thing I'd say is, if we look at the soil testing, is find a trusted advisor that. We have some really good trusted advisors that are great on plants. You need to have one that's good on plants and one that can also hold their own when we start discussing Bray versus Mehlich. So, and it's probably not one trusted advisor, it's a handful. So build that community around you that you can go to, and find Chase. Look him out. Look up Jason. Because he does have a heavy soil chemistry background that he can discuss that. And when you get a soil test from Ward or Servitech or A&L Labs or Midwest Labs or EnviroAg Lab, which he would much prefer, he could walk you down the lines of, so this test, if you get something from Ward, you're going to have Bray 1, Bray 2, Mehlich 3, Olson. You got all these different things, and there are nuances. Yeah. Like we have Lofton here. He's going to have nuances about the plant uptake, and so get a trusted advisor that understands potassium movement in a plant and why and get a trusted advisor that understands soil testing, so you could really learn. My take home for a lot of this is we have a very easy capability to hit the easy button and have somebody else do it for us. Always ask questions.
Right.
Don't assume I'm right. Don't assume Jace is right. Don't assume anybody's right. You should be asking questions and doing some research of your own.
Yeah, I actually have one more question. No, one thing I've been really doing more plant tissue analysis, and it's something we didn't go over a whole bunch in school. And I kind of wonder, like molybdenum, there's Rex for most of them, kind of sufficiency on that, but I've not really seen a whole bunch on molybdenum, and I've not really pursued it. And I just kind of see, have you guys looked at that? Even even a soil test, kind of get it to where, because I look at it in plant tissues a lot.
Yeah. Molybdenum I don't do on the soil test right now. The Swaffle's not capable. I don't have it pushing through my lab. I need to develop the confidence that I can measure it properly. And it's a tough one to chase with its mobility and how it operates in the soil. I see a molybdenum soil test very much like sulfur. It shows that you could be exceptionally low or exceptionally high, and if it's somewhere around okay, you don't know. And so it's a tough run. As far as the tissue test, I don't chase tissue test too much because I've done a ton of research on tissue testing in our state, and the concentration of nutrient in a plant tissue is so varied in a varied climate that for me it's untrustworthy. Okay. So we'd go out to an area two times this table. So I'm talking an area that's a 6x10. We'd sample Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday mornings from the same area at the same time. We'd actually do an 8, a noon, and a 5. What we found on Monday, that Monday everything's good. Tuesday we had some deficiencies. Thursday we had some toxicities, and Friday we had deficiencies.
Wow.
And we would do that over patterns. What we found is that because of our climate, so let's think about this. Monday and Tuesday of this week, I had frost on my truck.
Yeah.
Right? And it hit 75 degrees.
Yeah.
Correct? So what we found is that those tissue contents were more related to the atmospheric conditions of the day before and the night than they were to the soil. So if we had humidity, or if we had a big delta, I call it delta. So if we had a really low, we went from hot to low, or if we had a narrow change in temp, or if we had wind, or if we had sun, or if we had cloud cover, that had a greater influence on the nutrient concentrations in the tissue than anything in the soil.
Wow.
And so I've been very hesitant.
Okay.
Now, I still love it for good and bad, but I'm very hesitant about nutrient Rex on that. Okay. I've applied hundreds of plots of foliar calcium, foliar molybdenum, foliar boron, foliar zinc, all based upon tissue test, and I've yet to get a economic response.
Yeah, so I tell people, like, I can run the extractant,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but to give you
Yeah.
recs, like I can go to, I think it's Georgia, it's like the
Yeah.
southern state, and that's like, oh, look at this,
Yep.
be with God, you know.
Well, and it's one of those things, and I tease, and I'll probably get in trouble, and you might need to edit this out, is that a lot of our companies provide free tissue testing.
Okay.
When do we give anything away for free? A loss leader?
Yeah, I was gonna say a loss leader.
In the word, it's a loss leader,
Yeah.
right? It's a loss leader.
Get you in the door.
Get you in the door.
Yeah.
And so that they're expecting those values would come back and have, because it's not cheap to run a plant tissue
No.
analysis. In fact, it's a nitric acid. I run nitric acid. I don't know what you do.
Yeah.
So
Variation of EPA
you grind it, and you put it in strong nitric acid in a hot plate, and it stirs and gases off.
Yeah.
And then you have to drain it and then run it through an ICP, which is basically a plasma torch, and we're burning the liquid.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And so the plasma torch itself is costing me, my run on it is $7 or $6 a sample because of it's an argon.
Yeah.
It's all these things. That's not talking nitric acid and the vent hoods and all that stuff. And so it's a test that I would charge to make money. It's a $15 to $18 test.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
I can do NPK for a lot cheaper than that.
Yeah.
And I charge for that. So it's just one of those things that tissue testing, there's cotton petiole test under irrigated conditions, more consistent climates. There's a little bit more, I think, consistency in that, where nighttime, daytime lows aren't that varied.
right.
The Central Plains and Southern Plains is a disaster when we start talking about crop models
Yeah.
and soil models and nutrient stuff, because we're so highly variable.
Wow. That's a lot of science.
Yep, and you're going to have to cut it all out.
Oh, no, it's staying in because
Okay.
it's very helpful to help explain again what goes on in the soil and how you guys both work to help producers understand that and then grow a more economical crop. So, yeah. Well, Jace, thank you so much for going on with us this week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jace.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation of the Red Dirt Agronomy Podcast. And if you'd like to join the next discussion, leave us a message on our website, reddirtagronomy.com. We'd like to thank Jace Whitehead of Enviro Ag Labs for joining us on this episode of the podcast. And again, if you get a chance, visit our website, reddirtagronomy.com, to find out more information about all of our guests and any of the resources we discussed today or on previous episodes of the podcast. For Dr. Josh Lofton and Dr. Brian Arnell, I am Dave Deacon, and we all want to thank you for listening. The proceeding is a copyrighted recording of Ag Now Media, LLC 2026. And yes, all rights are reserved.